What's up, YouTube? This is your boy John from Project Ellsworth, and I am back with you today to give you my review of the legendary 1980 film Friday the 13th. That was a lot. Friday the 13th was written by Victor Miller. It was directed by Sean S. Cunningham, starring a very young Kevin Bacon, Adrienne King, and the late Betsy Palmer.
Friday the 13th. You may only see it once, but that will be enough.
If you're new to the channel, remember to click that subscribe button. If you're already subscribed to the channel, welcome back, folks. It's good to see you again. So our story begins in 1957. We got a bunch of camp counselors sitting around the fire. They're all singing songs, some kumbaya stuff going on, and eventually two of the counselors decide that they want to sneak away and go fool around. Just when things start heating up, somebody quietly sneaks into the room and kills them both. Damn. You ought to know better. So now the story jumps to present day, and we have a whole group of would-be counselors all heading towards Crystal Lake to open that sucker back up again. One of those would-be counselors is Annie. She stops in a diner looking to see if she can catch a ride to Crystal Lake. Once she announces where she's going, she has to deal with a bunch of ugly looks, and everybody looks a bit shocked that they're actually opening Crystal Lake back up again. So there's one dude in the diner named Enos. He says, "I'll give you a ride, I'm going that way." So he takes her out to the car, and when they're on their way out to the car, actually the truck, when they're on the way out to the truck, they come across a dude named Ralph. He jumps out and he tells her that they're all doomed. Everybody going to Camp Crystal Lake is doomed. That place has a death curse. So once they get past Ralph and they get in the truck, Enos gives Annie the rundown that there was a little boy drowned in 1957 at that out at that campsite. And the year after that, 2 people were brutally murdered at that same campsite. So he gives her the whole spiel. You kids shouldn't be up there. You should leave well enough alone. You don't need to be opening that camp back up. There's too many bad memories involved with that joint. So now, in the nicest way possible, Annie tells Enos, "Thanks, I'll take that under advisement. Mind your own business." She gets out of the truck and she starts to walk towards Crystal Lake. She's got to hitchhike the rest of the way now. I wonder how that goes. So Friday the 13th overall is basically your typical slasher film, but the difference is this is one of the original slasher films. This one does it better than most slasher films, and this 1980 film is one of the ones that helped create the template for the modern slasher film. I also thought that this film is a perfect example that sometimes what you don't see is scarier than what you do see. Another thing I find really interesting about this movie is when most people think of Friday the 13th, they think of Jason and they think of the hockey mask and they think of a non-stop bloodbath. This movie really doesn't have tons of blood in it. There's some, but there's not tons. Another thing that this movie does not have that most people probably assume that it has is on-screen kills. I think that there's only 3 on-screen kills, technically 4, but you don't really see exactly what happens. But 3 that I can think of off the top of my head on-screen kills. There are plenty of kills in this movie, but no, there's only 3 of them that are actually on screen. So with that being said, what you see for the most part in this movie is the aftermath of the murders that take place in this movie. And all of the on-screen murders, as well as all of the aftermath of the murders, were all created with the practical effects from the brilliant mind of Tom Savini. Another brilliant piece of horror filmmaking that you got to consider here is just the setting and the set in general. You have a murderer on the loose, in the woods, in the dark, surrounding defenseless young men and women in a campground. And it doesn't get much scarier than that. As far as the acting goes in this movie, it's not Oscar worthy, but it's definitely acceptable. I mean, it's not bad. The only person in this movie that went on to have a big career was Kevin Bacon. He was very young in this movie. It wasn't his first movie, but it was one of his first few movies, 4th or 5th, something like that. I know he did Animal House around this time. The only other 2, Adrienne King and Betsy Palmer, both had very small bit appearances in future installments of this franchise. But that's really it. The only person who blew up after this movie was Kevin Bacon. I mean, the dude's got a college drinking game and a board game named after him, for God's sakes. Friday the 13th was a complete and total game changer in the 80s. After this movie came out, kill counts started to rise. More blood thrown in. More nudity thrown in. More inventive ways to kill people had to be created. This is definitely one of the most legendary movies in the history of horror movies. So Friday the 13th, the original movie in 1980. It's not my favorite horror movie, but it is way up there on my all-time favorite list. If you're watching this video and you are a horror movie fan, I have to assume that you've seen Friday the 13th. But if by any chance you have not, watch Friday the 13th. This movie is legendary and it was an absolute game changer. Have you seen this flick? How do you feel about Friday the 13th? Leave me some comments down below and let's talk about it. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you really like this video and you have been enjoying my content up to this point, please do me a huge personal favor. Click that subscribe button and then ring that notification bell. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Have a kick-ass day and thank you for watching.